let's get into it. Let's start with our first topic, which I'm going to be honest. I don't love agreeing with, or not necessarily agreeing, but I don't love taking my cues from commentators online, especially on the ESPNs. But I want to talk a little bit about FCS football. So FCS football is going on right now. There were some FCS programs that played in the fall, but I think the championship is in the spring, and so most FCS programs are playing right now. They're playing in the spring. I probably don't have to tell you why. They delayed their season from the fall to the spring for the sake of COVID-19. I would say that their goal was to play the FCS football in a time when COVID-19 virus was not as prevalent. I would say they have probably achieved that. That right now, COVID-19 is on the downslope, and in the fall, it was on the upslope. Not value judgment, just kind of a statement of facts. Anyway, so it's sparked a little bit of a conversation that one person, David Pollock, former Georgia, he played for Georgia, right?
Yes.
Was he the guy who was on The Bachelor, or was that Jesse Palmer?
That was Jesse Palmer.
That was Jesse Palmer.
I think. That was a
They're
long
all so
time ago.
handsome.
No. The Bachelor was Aaron Rodgers' brother, Jordan.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're all so handsome.
They are.
I wish I was handsome. Anyway, point is, David Pollock made the point on ESPN. He said, hey, what if FCS football moved to the spring permanently?
Mm-hmm.
What if, instead of, I think we all recognize that the 2020 season, which is known as 2021, was always going to be weird. What if we took this situation and made it permanent? I think that the argument for moving it to the spring permanently is kind of, I would say, pretty clear. And that is that FCS, I think FCS football is, and sub-FBS footballs are really intriguing and really fun to watch. And when it is in the fall and going head-to-head with FBS football,
right,
which is this juggernaut, it kind of gets swallowed whole.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't get the attention that I would argue it deserves.
Right.
That if you could have the best FCS game in the world, you could have Sam Houston State against Incarnate Word, which would be, right now,
a banger.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But if it's going up against...
like in the state of Texas, if Texas is playing...
If it's going up against... If it's going up against Texas Tech versus Kansas, a decidedly boring Big 12 game, it is not going to get nearly the attention that Tech and Kansas did, simply because of the TV contracts, simply because of the fan bases, simply because of that. So, why not move it to the spring and give yourself a bigger platform when everybody, I think, is kind of starving for football.
Right.
Right? Everybody is football is a year-round sport. Hi. And give them something to watch.
Right.
Give people an opportunity to get into it.
I agree completely. And for sake of debate, can I bring up the counter argument?
Well, of course.
I say that the number one concern is the fact that the FCS schools rely so heavily on the payment that they get to play the FBS schools is where the biggest concern comes into play.
To me, there's two different concerns that I would have. And the reason that I say no, and you shouldn't move it to the spring permanently, that it's fine for a one-year fix. I think we all recognize it needed to be a one-year fix.
And hopefully it's building more fan base right now, too. Hopefully that carries over.
Hopefully there's a positive that if you've never seen Sam Houston State play and you're watching them on Saturday and you're like, this team's really fun.
Dominating fools.
This team's really fun. I like what KC Keeler's doing there. Then hopefully you'll hop on the bandwagon. That's neither here nor there. The two arguments that I would have against moving FCS football to the spring. One is what you mentioned. There's a financial element to this. That, yes, they do have TV deals, and potentially you could get a better TV deal if you were to move to the spring permanently, because you're not competing for airtime on ESPN2 with Michigan State and Minnesota.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because that's always going to win. But even if you do get that TV deal, from an individual school-by-school perspective, right now, for some of these FCS schools, they are largely reliant on the pay games. They are largely reliant on Texas paying Tarleton to come to Austin on Saturday to play them.
Well,
because
Group of 5 schools are reliant on that, so
certainly
it's
do.
definitely reliant in FCS.
FCS, they rely on that revenue. They need that revenue. And, the university, for those who don't know, the University of Texas will cut a check to Tarleton to come and play at DKR.
Yeah, you get like $1 million to go and play.
and for Tarleton, it's a huge win for them because they get $1 million and their kids get to go play at Austin. And for Texas, they get to fill their schedule with a game that, let's be honest, is probably not going to threaten them in the loss column.
And their third strings get some playing time half the time.
Right. So that's part of it. They have to be made whole from the revenue perspective. Here's the bigger issue. And here's why I think moving to the spring would be a net negative for FCS. I think moving to the spring would further what is already a problem with perception, which is I think it would be othering FCS. What it would do is I think that if they move to the FCS and you have a kid who has an offer from a bad school, a team that's bad at football.
UTEP?
That's mean. I was going to say Bowling Green.
Okay.
They have an offer from Bowling Green. And Bowling Green plays on weirdo days. They play on Tuesday night Maction. They play on Thursdays. They play on Fridays. They play on Wednesdays. They play all over but they play in the fall. If you have an offer from there and you have an offer from Sam Houston State, an objectively excellent FCS team, there is, to me, a real threat to FCS that kid is going to look at that and say, yeah, but I have to play in the spring.
Yep.
And it would be so different. And suddenly they would be othered. They would be, oh, they're in that wacky league. They're in, I think of this in a lot of ways, the way that we think of the CFL.
Yes.
The Canadian Football League. The Canadian Football League is fun to watch. The Canadian Football League has some really good talent in it. But the Canadian Football League has 2 or 3 things that are different that I think end up being, I think that keeps them from having more talent go there, that a guy would rather be, if pay were equal, a guy would rather be on the practice squad of the Minnesota Vikings than he would be going to the CFL, simply because things are just that much different.
It almost feels like a rec league, almost.
It's othered
yeah,
in Americans' minds. Fair or not, that is the perception, is that it is othered. I think the XFL has fought really hard not to be othered. They fought really hard not to be a second, not necessarily to be less than, but to be.
It's what minor league baseball is to major league baseball. Like a step, you can look at it as a stepping stone rather than something that's just a totally separate unit.
And to me, that othering of FCS football by moving it to the spring permanently would have a net negative impact on the sport. Yes, would they have a bigger platform? I agree, but
March Madness.
They'd have to fight against college basketball, which wouldn't be a problem until it got to March, because I think that borne out. They'll have to fight about baseball and stuff like that. But I think it's fair to say they would have a bigger platform in the spring than in the fall. But that said, I think that if you're looking for the overall health of the league, moving it to the spring would be problematic because it would become that different league. It would become so separate because of the time of the year that it plays in.
Well, the other thing that I didn't think about until a lot of people brought it up in the comments too, but that seems like it would gravely affect the transfer portal too.
Oh, well, there's, I mean,
those guys, like when you go to a FCS school, a lot of guys look at that as, again, a stepping stone to get up to an FBS level and to enter the transfer portal and to get to, do that. But it's like that would make things real wonky.
it would make things very wonky that, if you wanted to move that, there would be all sorts of eligibility issues and things like that. I think I understand the people who say, hey, why not play for them like when you have the most attention, which would be in the spring. And
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, I do too.
But I think overall, on balance, FCS is better suited playing in the fall than it is playing in the spring. Now, let's think of creative ways to get them that spotlight. Let's play on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Look how good the Maction does. Like, that's
right.
typically not very good football, but people watch it because it's on Tuesdays.
It is at least a brand.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean? Come up with those types of ways to give yourself to carve out a little bit of spotlight. But I also do not think that moving to the spring is a net positive for the FCS ranks.
Also, as a person who worked in an athletic department for 4 years, that's just nightmare for every person working in an athletic department.
Oh, yeah.
Having that and basketball and all the other stuff going on, that's a nightmare.
There's also that.